One of the nice features of C++ is that we can have default values for our parameters. So here's an example of a function, and right now we don't have the default parameters. We'll add those later. So it's called iterate, and it has a start and an end value, a step, and a number of columns. And what it's going to do is it's going to print numbers between start and end, inclusive, and it will print a certain number of columns. After a certain number of columns, it will add an end of line character, and it will increment those numbers by the step. So this part should be a pretty straightforward function. You'll notice here that we're putting in a tab between each value, and we do a modulo on the number of columns to see if we're at the end of where we want to be. So I'm going to call this initially with 4 parameters. So we'll iterate from 0 to 40 with a step of 1 and a column count of 8. So we use G++, we use the C++ 17 standard, and that's all good. So then there's our code. I guess it actually would be a little cleaner if we went from 1 to 40 so that we don't have that one lagger, but that's okay. Yeah, okay, so that looks a little bit cleaner. So now I can add default values for the step and for the number of columns. And so we'll say that default is 5. I think that's a reasonable default. So first, I'll call iterate with 3 parameters. So that'll use the default column value. And I'll just copy and paste this just to make it easier. So we have a new line. We'll do iterate. We'll do 141. Let's make this a little more interesting. Let's say 1 to 200 with a step of 5. We'll use the default column count, so we'll just leave that off. So you can see here we have something did not work. So our step here is 7. Oh wait, no, that is correct actually, because our default columns is 5. So let's pick a different step just so that we see the distinction. Okay, so there you can see we skip 10 at a time, and we have 5 columns because that's the default value up here. And we can also have the step as a default, so I can call iterate with 2 parameters. That'll use the default step and column values. And again, I'll copy what we have here. And let's iterate from, this time let's go from 50 to 75. And we'll leave the others defaulted. So 50, and we only need 2 parameters. Let's go to 74 because I think that will give us a consistent number across all the columns. So if we compile this and run it, you can see we got a default step value of 1 and a default number of columns of 5. So this is a nice way to write code that's a little more flexible, and it also allows you to modify code, a function, without actually breaking something, because if you change this, if you add it as a default parameter at the end, then code that doesn't have that change in it will still work because your parameters, it'll take 2, 3, or 4 parameters.